Gentlemen, a pleasant good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Lewis Sports Network. Hope everybody is having a wonderful Friday as we head into the weekend. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, make sure those post notifications are turned on. Make sure you are sharing on your social media platforms. Truly appreciate it. Peace and blessings to everybody. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Friday night. On to the video. Today is March 17th, ladies and gentlemen. And I haven't done one of these in a long time, so today we're going to be doing a wrestling video because I wanted to break down something that happened on March 17th, 21 years ago on this date. That would be WrestleMania 18, and WrestleMania 18 took place in Toronto, Canada, in Skydome, home where the Blue Jays play. Now, what's historic about that event at that venue is it was the second time that WrestleMania was held in the Skydome. The only other time that it was back in 1990. That was WrestleMania 6. And there was, at that time, it was the first time that a WrestleMania event was held outside of the U.S. in Toronto. And the match of the night, and the most featured match that night was Hulk Hogan against the Ultimate Warrior. It was title versus title. Ultimate Warrior was the Intercontinental Champion. Hulk Hogan was the WWE Champion. And in that match, Hogan put the Ultimate Warrior over. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, there was a icon versus icon match that took place that night. And I'm talking about Hulk Hogan against the People's Champion, the Brahma Bull, the most electrifying man in sports and entertainment, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. You're talking about two megastars who I never thought would have crossed paths. At the time that I saw Hogan come out at No Way Out and then come out the very next night on Raw to address the public in his promo, and The Rock came out. Now, originally, for this WrestleMania match, it was not supposed to be The Rock. The Rock was the second choice. The first choice was supposed to be Stone Cold Steve Austin against Hulk Hogan. The reason that match did not happen was because for several reasons. Number one, Austin felt that even though it was good on paper, he felt that Hogan and him were not going to mesh very well. He felt that their styles were going to be very conflicting and that the product itself wasn't going to look good in the ring. There was also an ego thing. It was because he really didn't have a problem with the guys, but the thing is, he knew that Hogan was a politician. So because of the politics, I said that me personally, like back then as a kid, I would have loved to seen Austin and Hogan just because I was huge fans of both of them. But now as an adult, when you look back, you realize that it made sense for Austin and Hogan not to compete at the time. Austin has later on regretted the decision that he should have faced Hulk Hogan. But I thought it made perfect sense. And the thing is also, you have to understand that at that point in his career, Austin, to me, his heart was not into the business. He was getting cheers, of course, because he was a face, but he was also in a very bad place, physically and mentally. He was having a lot of physical problems, and he was drinking a lot, which he suffered from anxiety, which is one of the things that he suffered from. And he just felt that Hogan was going to be too much. There was going to be too much politics involved as to where that Austin probably wouldn't have gone over, and it wouldn't have gone the way that he wanted to. So, as you can see right there, egos came into the way that probably wouldn't have worked out. And the thing is, Austin's good friends with Kevin Nash because they rode together in his days in WCW. So that's why, even though he really didn't have a problem with like the rest of the guys, he ended up agreeing to working with Scott Hall, but he regretted later on saying that he should have did the match with Hogan. Like I said, I felt that Hogan and Austin would have had a really nice build-up. I just don't know if the match was going to deliver not only the marquee names on paper, but then after the build-up, was the match really going to be able to do it? It's like, you don't know. Okay, now enter The Rock. So The Rock does that famous line where he says, you know, you talk about main eventing, headlining WrestleMania after WrestleMania after WrestleMania after WrestleMania. Well, The Rock says, how do you feel about headlining one more WrestleMania with The Rock? And before that, Hogan was talking about how he's the biggest star, past or present, and that the people turned on him things like that. And I'm the reason that you're here. And remember, this was Hogan's first appearance in 9 years after he lost to Yokozuna at the King of the Ring in 93. So it was over 9 years that Hogan had not been in a WWE, ring, because he went on to WCW, won a couple of world titles. And remember, he ended up forming the famous NWO with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who were WWE guys. Well, they originally were WCW guys, but they went into the WWE, had tremendous success, and then they came as more established. To me, that's what made WCW WCW. It's when the WWE guys were established stars, it gave them more credibility as a product. And that's where the guaranteed contracts came in. And you got to thank Scott Hall and Kevin Nash for that. And then you could put Hogan too, because Hogan had a very lucrative contract when he signed with WCW. And guys who were from WCW who decided not to come to the WWE, they waited until their contract pretty much expired and they were getting paid all that money. So they could sit at home and do nothing. But Nash and Hall, they got their money. Hogan got his money, but then Vince looked at the NWO and felt like there was still value in them. Whereas part of the locker room, they were mixed. Some people felt like, it's a big mistake bringing him here. Other people felt like they possibly could make some impact. So anyway, fast forward to The Rock. He makes the challenge. Hogan eventually says yes. And I remember JR and the King making that call, and they were talking about it during that promo, how amazing it was that, man, who would have ever thought, this was a match that we thought we never likely to see, and it's true. And now, as a fan, there's a lot of things that I notice now that I didn't notice when I was a kid watching this. Because as a kid, you're just excited to see your favorite wrestlers in the ring doing their thing, and then you start to imitate them and all these kind of things. As an adult, when I looked at that promo, and I've seen that promo many times, but I started to pick up little details into what made that promo so special. The next night after the NWO debuted themselves at No Way Out, when Vince brought him in, as he talked about injecting a lethal dose of poison, as maniacal as Vince is. If you look at when The Rock and Hogan, they stared at each other, what they already did right there, they gave a big fight feel when they were staring at each other face to face. And that's something that you got to give Hulk Hogan a lot of credit for. He did this with Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. He did it with The Warrior at WrestleMania 6. And during the build-up with The Rock, the stare downs Hogan was able to give it a big fight feel, which is what Hogan has always been known for. And I give him a lot of credit for that. Say what you want about his in-ring work, his in-ring skills. Hogan had some good skills in the territory days. It's just, it became a little bit different, and he had to modify the style when it was the birth of Hulkamania. But the stare down that The Rock and Hulk Hogan had, and you listen to the reaction of the crowd, which actually comes into huge play when they meet at WrestleMania. And I'm going to get to that in a second. You look at the reaction of the crowd, and then The Rock and Hogan, they slightly tilt their heads in opposite directions. Rock looks right, Hogan looks left. Well, no, Rock looks to his right, Hogan looks to his right. Then The Rock looks to his left, and Hogan looks to his left. And I said, damn, man. I said, just that scene alone gave me goosebumps, and the reaction of the fans. And quite honestly, Vince was starting to notice that Hulk Hogan was getting great reactions just because it's been a while since they've seen Hulk Hogan. You look at a lot of childhood memories were brought back up from the fans, and just that nostalgia of potential, I'm like, oh, it's Hulk Hogan. Like, this guy was Hulkamania. I mean, I know he's Hollywood Hogan with the NWO, but it's like, bro, this guy was Hulk Hogan in the WWE. I said, I grew up with him and Randy Savage and Andre the Giant and Greg the Hammer Valentine and Tito Santana, and Ricky the Dragon. The list goes on and on. King Kong Bundy, the list goes on and on. But the point is, when Hogan came back, he was getting cheers that Vince was looking at it as, you know what, there's a possibility that Hogan could be a face. But at first, it didn't seem that way, just because a part of you knew that, Hogan was still able to do his heel work. So he was still getting his boos and he knew how to drew heat. But so the buildup was great. I remember The Rock got ran over by the ambulance after he rock bottomed Hulk Hogan and Hall and Nash. They attacked him as The Rock was walking up the ramp after Hogan accepted the challenge and said that it was going to be a pleasure to kick The Rock's ASS at WrestleMania and all that. And he said, and good luck to you because you're going to need it. And The Rock goes, not as much as you, brother. And JR, oh brother. Excuse me. My bad. But now, so we got the build-up. The Rock gets injured with injured ribs. And, then Austin gets involved with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And Austin ends up facing Scott Hall at WrestleMania. Now we get to WrestleMania. The week before, 6 days before WrestleMania, it was a 3-on-2 handicap match. And the match wasn't great by all means, but just the star power and just the reaction that the fans gave those guys made the match, more special than it was, just because of who was in there. Hogan got the win over The Rock in a tag match, so he had the momentum going into WrestleMania. Now it's WrestleMania, it's game day, 68,000 strong. The Rock, there were Rock fans there, but there were a lot more Hulk Hogan fans at the Skydome. So when The Rock is doing the interview with the coach, the fans were booing The Rock. He got some cheers, but he was getting boos. So that let you know right then and there that Hogan was going to be the face in the match and The Rock was going to be the heel. Right there, right then and there. So then Hogan tells Scott Hall and Kevin Nash when Scott Hall fails to beat Stone Cold that they're going to go, join Hogan to try to pretty much help eliminate The Rock. Hogan tells both of them to stay back and that he wanted to do this alone. Now we get to the match. Hogan comes out first and gets a crazy loud ovation when he comes out. And even if Hogan is donning the black and white, you had the red and yellow feeling of Hulkamania once again. And the crowd is just eating it up with Hulk Hogan. So then out comes The Rock. The Rock gets a solid ovation. He got a mixed reaction, but The Rock got a reaction, right? Excuse me. So then they go into the ring. What do The Rock and Hogan do? They stand on opposite corners. They start to walk up very, very, very slowly. And I love that part on how they did that. The stare down with the slow walk. It was so good because the fans were eating it up and the match had not even started yet. That told you the great psychology that both Hogan and The Rock had to be able to draw the crowd in and make you feel every moment that they're feeling, which is also, I want to give credit to both men on how they were able to grab you emotionally in that match. So the psychological aspect, the emotional aspect, A+ for both The Rock and Hulk Hogan. That's how good it was. Then they get to the center and then they do the face-off. And what did I say about Hulk Hogan that he doesn't get enough credit for? His ability to give you a big fight feel. WrestleMania 3 against Andre, WrestleMania 6 against The Warrior, WrestleMania 18 against The Rock. Then they do the same thing that they did on Raw. They look towards the opposite ends and the crowd is just eating it up and the match ain't even start, and then they both start to trash talk, which makes it even better, right? I'm not gonna break down the entire match or back and forth. The match is on YouTube. You could definitely check out the match on YouTube. If you want to see the full match, you can go to Daily Motion. The full match is about when you consider the build-up and the entrances and then the match itself and then the post-match. It's let me see, how many minutes is it? 34 minutes and 20 seconds, I believe, is the amount. Okay. To keep the long story short, The Rock noticed the crowd was booing him. And when Hogan was doing these simple power moves, he was getting such a reaction. And he was doing the typical Hulk Hogan stuff that the yellow and red, all real American Hulk Hogan would do. The Rock noticed that. So The Rock said he was able to improvise on the fly and said, you know what? I'm going to play heel. And one thing I noticed that doesn't get talked about, and I remember people were talking about SummerSlam when The Rock faced Brock Lesnar. His promo was indicating that he was going to Hollywood Rock. You need to watch this match against Hulk Hogan here at WrestleMania. The Rock was already showing Hollywood Rock even in this match because he played the heel. Now, at first, it's like, he was just playing the heel. He wasn't going to turn heel right away. It was just going to happen eventually. But the crazy part is, I felt like when I watched that match again, I felt like I was watching Hollywood Rock in that match. That's what's so crazy. And it's like, I didn't even pick up on it until I rewatched the match as an adult. And I was like, oh, I said, yo, those are the stuff you don't notice when you're a kid. You may have seen it, but it's like, you can now explain it in further detail now as an adult. And Hogan was able to do heelish things, even though he was the face that night. And The Rock played the role very well. And then my favorite part of the match, I'll never forget it. The Rock hits the rock bottom on Hulk Hogan. The referee starts to cover. I think Mike Chioda was the referee for that match. How lucky was he to get to do that match? Two legends, icon versus icon, wrestling's past, wrestling's future, as Michael Cole had said in the build-up package. And you know how the King says, it's WrestleMania, baby. With the laugh. But The Rock hits the rock bottom. It's a 2 count. Hogan kicks out. Hogan shakes it off. And he starts to do the Hulk up. And oh my goodness. The reaction of that crowd when Hogan hulks up. Because you had not seen it in a WWE ring in 9 years. Hogan has many fans in the Sky Dome. And the crowd goes ballistic. The cameras flashing, bulbing. Fans in a frenzy. And then the Rock's face as a heel, he's shocked, right? The Rock played it so well when he did that. And so then The Rock hits Hogan again, and then Hogan does the typical, point, and he's like, no, it doesn't affect. And oh my God, the King goes, he's like, yeah, what you gonna do, Rock? What you gonna do? I was like, wow. And so then, The Rock tries to punch Hogan. Hogan blocks it, hits him. He takes The Rock off the ropes, hits him with the big boot. The crowd is absolutely insane. And I want to give a shout out to the Toronto Sky Dome crowd. They played such a huge part in this match. The match itself, it was actually good. Hogan was actually able to put off some really solid wrestling moves. And like I said before, everybody wants to talk about Hogan is overrated in the ring and all that. But he actually had good in-ring skills when it was in the days of the territories, right before he came to the WWE and then became completely different. He was actually a solid wrestler, back in the day. Solid. Anyway, Hogan hits the boot. He does his typical put my hand over the ear to the crowd. And he's like, what? I can't hear you. Hogan does the leg drop. And JR with one of my favorite calls. That's the move. The hippie, Andre the Giant. Here's the cover. And then The Rock kicks out. Hogan is shocked. And then Hogan, and I remember Hogan doing the rock bottom in this match. And shout out to The Rock for selling the rock bottom too. Hogan tries to go for another leg drop, but The Rock avoids the contact. So then The Rock hits not one, but he hits up 2 rock bottoms. And then The Rock does the kiff up and then niffs up, and then he does the people's elbow. Hogan puts him over. And The Rock got a standing ovation. And that's why JR says, that was a match for the ages. But the biggest reason that match was the match for the ages was because the psychology and the ability of both men to draw the crowd. And that crowd was eating that match up from start to finish. If I mentioned it before, I mentioned it again. Shout out to the crowd at WrestleMania 18. for that historic match. And the crazy part is then Hogan extends his hand to salute The Rock. Hall and Nash were like, what's up with you? Like, how can you shake his hand after that? And then they start to double team him, and then The Rock comes in to save Hogan. And then Hogan and The Rock eliminate Hall and Nash. And then that's the beginning of Hogan's face turn. And then Hulkamania runs wild for one more year. And Hulk Hogan had he actually had a really good, solid run with the rebirth of Hulkamania. Obviously different, but still, I thought he was unbelievable. Because now Vince did not realize how big of a reaction Hogan got, because he thought it was going to be kind of just for that one night. But the thing was, he was getting cheers even before that. So, in typical Vince, it's like, we just might as well turn you face. We might as well just turn you face. And the funny thing is, the fans that Hogan had lost after he left the company, where fans were not happy with his stale act with Hulkamania, he was able to win his fans back. The Rock was able to put him over, and Hulk Hogan was reborn. He was reborn. And fans couldn't get enough of it. And I was smiling, because it was nice to see. It was nice to bring somebody from a time machine from the past. You bring him to the present, and it's like he's even more appreciated now than probably he's ever been, with how much he's contributed to the business. Whether you love him or whether you hate him, you cannot deny Hogan's contributions to the business. He may be the politician that I don't like, when I found out what he really likes to be as a shrewd operator and an opportunist. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that this wrestling company has had that would not have had if it was not for the surgence of Hulk Hogan. Those are facts. And quite honestly, The Rock became an icon that night when he beat Hulk Hogan. And those guys showed respect. And it was an unbelievable match. It was an unbelievable match. It just doesn't sound sexy on paper. Like, again, the stars, great on paper. The build-up, great build-up. The match was okay. The Rock carried Hogan in that match, but give Hogan credit, he was able to pull some moves off. I wouldn't call the match a show stealer, but what stole the show was the fans. And those guys' ability to keep the fans interested the entire time. That's a hell of a skill that they have. It's one of the reasons why The Rock is so great as an actor in Hollywood, because he knows how to play to the crowd. Hogan has always been able to do that. He knows how to play that to the crowd too. So much respect to both men on this date, which tells you how iconic this match is. And it's such a big moment because we talked about Hogan becoming the face. We got the early signs of Rock becoming Hollywood Rock. And the funny thing is, this was a really great 2002 for The Rock. I mean, I think it's one of his best and more underrated years for this reason. The Rock had a classic match against Chris Jericho at the Royal Rumble. The Rock had a classic at WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan. The Rock had a great triple threat match for the undisputed title at Vengeance that year against Undertaker and Kurt Angle, and Taker came in as the champion. That was a great triple threat match. If you need to watch it. If you have not seen that match, you need to watch that triple threat match at Vengeance. It is so good. So good. He also had a couple of good matches with like Eddie Guerrero and Ric Flair as undisputed champion. I think he faced them in back-to-back weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So it was good. And then he got to face Brock Lesnar, who he put over in a classic SummerSlam match in Long Island, where The Rock also got booed. And that was the night that when Brock Lesnar beat The Rock and The Rock was getting boos, The Rock was kind of doing the same thing in terms of playing the heel factor. He did the same thing. But that was because Paul Heyman was from New York. But anyway, that was when The Rock did that. He did the infamous heel promo where he was telling you now that he was going to become Hollywood Rock, and that sing along with The Rock, it's over, So it just lets you know right there. But yeah, Hogan and The Rock, two icons in the business. What can you say? Just amazing in-ring work. Just amazing to be able to just capture the audience's hearts, keep them invested in the match. And it was like the crowd was a part of the match. They were a part of it. That's what made it so special. And it's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches and one of my favorite matches of all time. And I'm always going to look back to just see the little intricate details that both men did to make this story and this feud, as good as it was, special in my heart. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to share that WrestleMania moment, that WrestleMania 18 icon versus icon match between The Rock and Hulk Hogan. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section, man, on this wrestling that we just got to relive it today. Bless up. Live, laugh, love. Thank you guys for watching. I know it's a longer video, but definitely appreciate that, and had to just show you that the history between The Rock and Hogan at that historic match at WrestleMania. All right, guys, take care. Bless up, live, laugh, love. Thank you guys for watching.